Welcome everybody to our Magnification call for August 9th. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. This is our Kingdom Organizer Magnification call, and tonight I'm happy to turn the time over to Mr. Richard Paul Evans.
So thank you. And we had just given, before we started the recording, a little update on our friend Nathan Glad, my assistant's grandson. And tomorrow's a very important day. He goes and has his major surgery. And so your blessings and your kindness and the outreach have been wonderful. Thank you so much for being so kind to him. You have more than, I mean, you think that you might have made him happy. You should see his parents. And you think about it, it affects the parents more, but even the nurses. This is which is very ironic. Maybe I said this last time, but had Allison, who I'm driving to Texas tomorrow, had Allison not left, she would have been his nurse. So she's been contacting, because of HIPAA, she has to talk to Diane first, and she can call her friends and talk to them about Nathan, how he's going on. So, but there's a little bit of a connection here with what I want to talk to you about tonight, and there's not. I want to talk about death. When I say that, what do you think? Marcy, what did you think when I said that word? I need to unmute you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There you go. Yep.
I thought of my recent goal to live to be 100, and what if I get taken out of the game early? That's what I've been thinking of lately. But I think of it as I just came across something I wrote for a mother who lost an adult daughter unexpectedly, and the thing that comes usually to my mind is there's sadness, but right close by, there's a hope of a greater reunion. And that's kind of how death works for me.
So you feel hope there, the sadness of separation?
Yes.
Just like my daughter, you know, I watched everyone, we did a little apple juice toast to Allison. I watched everyone cry, especially my daughter, Jenna. Allison's been living with Jenna during all this because Allie sold her house, and they've been living together. And they were like this growing up. And Jenna just sobbed. It was very sweet. She goes, "You're my best friend, and I'm so grateful you got to be here." The sadness of separation, right? Even though, and like for Christians, we talk about, you know, even Jesus wept, and he knew exactly the whole plan at the death of Lazarus. So, who else? What else? What else comes to mind when I say death?
I felt fear.
You feel fear?
Yeah.
And what is the, if you chase that down, what is the fear of, Ginger?
I think it's just an old habit of being afraid of losing people I love, and how am I going to go on without that love in my life that I cherish, you know?
Mm-hmm. Including your own death?
No, I'm okay with that.
You're okay with your own death?
But my son, and mainly him.
Okay.
Yeah.
I heard a pastor say that death has taken over sex as the thing we don't talk about in culture. Now, Marcy, it's interesting that you said that. You think about being 100 years old. I never thought I would live past 50. And I told the psychiatrist that. I thought, I was pretty sure I would die in my 50s. I'd die young. I'm 57 now. And when I told him that, he said, "Well, of course." I go, "What do you mean, of course?" He said, "You had a traumatic childhood, and that actually is part of the imprint. People who had a traumatic childhood, they don't think they'll live long." He goes, "It's actually textbook." And I said, "Did I have a traumatic childhood?" And he laughed out loud. He said, "Yes, you had a traumatic childhood, Richard. You had a severely traumatic childhood." So when I think about death, I've had this kind of experience, which has been really interesting in the terms of, because of my first book, The Christmas Box, was healing for people who had lost someone close to them. I started to get invited to speak at hospice conferences around the country. And so, and these hospice workers, and I have a few friends who have been hospice workers, they are right there at the portal of death, right? Has anyone here ever been a hospice worker? Julie, you were?
Okay. I was not a hospice worker, but I stayed with my grandfather for the last 2 weeks of his life and did everything alongside the hospice person.
Okay.
So I went through some really interesting experiences with my grandfather, as he was very afraid of death. And I felt that there was one point where he was really upset with himself, and he was yelling at himself, "Rex, get up, get up." And I ran into his bedroom. It was midnight, and I sat by Grandpa and I rubbed his back and I said, "Grandpa, are you afraid to die?" And he said, "Yes." And then I talked to him about all of the animals that he loved and that he cared for. And I talked about his precious wife that was there waiting for him and all sorts of wonderful things. And within the next day and a half, he was peaceful, and then he left. And that has been a huge, huge experience for me, as I feel like I helped my grandfather face his fear, and then he died peacefully, and that's really affected me. It's helped me realize I don't want to be fearful of my death, and I don't think I am, but there's so much more than just that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Wayne Dyer, in his book, Your Erroneous Zones, he begins by saying, look over your shoulder. He goes, there's someone following you. It's your own death. And how you deal with that will make the difference in how you live your life. And so it's a matter of looking at it. It's like, okay, so how do we deal with it? How do we use it to our power and to our strength? How do we use it to magnify our lives? And so, first of all, a couple thoughts. I want to read something to you I wrote years ago, which I think is kind of interesting, called A Conversation with the Grim Reaper. Okay, and so I have it. I literally wrote this about 13 years ago, and fortunately I found out Diane may have the only copy of it, and she had actually taken a picture of it before she worked for me. And so she sent it to me, and I rewrote it because it had long disappeared with my last website. So, but I have an interesting experience. Having talked to these hospice workers around the country. Now, these hospice workers, they see multiple deaths, right? And I've yet to meet one who did not believe in an afterlife. Not one. I have not met a single one who did not have an experience of people being visited in that experience before someone died. And I had to sit in my own life. I remember sitting next to my grandmother as she was dying, and she was on a morphine drip, and she was completely incoherent. She was just looking straight ahead. She was just mumbling. And then all of a sudden she got very serious. She stopped and she looked up in the corner of the room, and she just sat there and just looked. And I said, do you see someone? And she said, she shook her head and said, not yet. Please, not yet. Just a few more minutes. And I thought, how interesting. Now, my father-in-law was a confessed atheist. And I remember when I saw him the night before he died. And it was a beautiful experience, because some of you heard the story that he didn't want me to marry his daughter. And we became friends. And one of the things he said to me is that night, he said, I think this is it. I think this is the time. I said, no, you're going to be fine. He goes, no, I think this is it. He was having severe heart problems. He was completely cognitive, right? He was a very sharp man. He was a union negotiator. The conversations we had up to the moment were the same as ours, right? There was no effect on his brain. It was his heart that was going. He had twice had bypass surgery, and his heart was failing him. And so he wasn't sure what was going to happen next with death. And I said, can I give you a blessing? And which was interesting. He said, yes. And he had resisted any kind of religious contact. And he said, yes, I would like one. And something came to me, in this inspiration came to me in this blessing, said, you will know that there's a next life before you die. I thought, well, that's an interesting thing to say. I don't know why I said that. It's an interesting thing to come out. Carrie called me the next day. I was at work, and she said, my dad had an experience this morning. And she said, because Carrie is the ultimate daughter. She would get up at 5:30 in the morning, drive over to the hospital and be there by 6 and stay with him till midnight, then come home and sleep and start the next day. And she did it for 30 days. And she was the most loving, doting daughter. And I love that about Carrie. So anyway, so she said something happened. He had something in his throat, so he couldn't speak. Right? They put him on a ventilator with his heart. So they couldn't have conversations, but he could write. And she said, they're talking, when all of a sudden he went like this. He jerked up. And he looked, and his eyes went over like this. And everyone in the room looked at each other. And Carrie said, Dad, do you see someone? He goes, someone's in the room. He goes, is it Grandma? And his wife, he goes, do you know who it is? He said, but there's someone in the room. I thought, how interesting, after that blessing, that he would know. And it was interesting. I talked the next day. I was having a lunch with some Chinese clients, and I got a call, and actually I had my phone off, and they called them and said, tell him to come home, he's dying. And I got there just a half hour before he passed. And I was talking to the nurse there, and she was there when he had the visitation. And they were telling, the doctors were saying, I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to walk out of here. And they thought he was doing better. And the nurse said to me, she goes, when someone came, I knew it was over. She goes, because when they come to visit, it's always over. They always prepare. I thought, how interesting is that? And I said, do you see this often? She goes, I've seen it so many times. Okay, now there are, and I'm going to call them afterlife deniers. They're like Holocaust deniers. You know that Bill Nye, the mannequin-looking science guy? He is not someone I like. I actually can't stand him. He has this agenda that's pretty ridiculous. But he insists that there is no afterlife, and that this is all done by oxygen in the brain. He thinks he understands why, and it's like, no, your argument doesn't follow. And because there are literally tens of thousands of documented experiences. And one of the clearest, I was documented with people right there, is a woman. She left her body. She flatlined. They saw it. It's all recorded, right? They have it there. And they revived her. And it's called the Maria case, because after she came to, she was talking to the social worker, and she told the social worker, I left my body. And the social worker's taking notes. And the social worker was actually a little bit doubtful. She goes, yeah. And she goes, yeah, someone left an orange tennis shoe up on the 3rd floor ledge. She goes, how? And there's no possible way where she was. She couldn't leave her bed. She hadn't left her bed. There's no way she could possibly have known this, that there was there. So she went up out of curiosity and went up there. Sure enough, there was a single orange tennis shoe sitting on the ledge up there. And she recorded that. And it's like, there is no possible way she could have known that existed. There are myriad of this kinds of documentation. So it's not just people are trying to feel good about, like, trying to give themselves some hope that there's something. It's almost like, it's kind of like the worst kept secret. And there also seems to be a little bit of an agenda trying to keep people from believing that. And I think in part because we have all met people who live as if they're never going to die, as if they're never going to meet a maker, if they're never going to be called into question on what they've done in their life choices. And so I'm fascinated with near-death experiences.
May I share mine when you have a minute?
Did you have a near-death experience?
Yes, I did last year.
I'll give you a couple minutes. Go ahead, Ginger.
Oh, yeah. I was in the hospital. They gave me too much opioids. I was respiratory distress. And I left my body as well. And I saw what they were trying to do to revive me. And after I did revive, I was able to tell them, as you just said, about an orange sneaker, what was going on. Not just that, before I went there, I went to the, in quotes, other side, and I spoke to my first husband, who had died several years before, and he taught me some beautiful things. And that's why I'm not afraid from my death. And thanks for letting me share that.
Thank you, Ginger. Thank you. That's beautiful.
You bet.
One of my favorite books, and one of the most important books ever written on death is near-death experiences, Return from Tomorrow. by Dr. George Ritchie. And Dr. George Ritchie, I actually met him. We became not close friends, but we became friends. And we would communicate from time to time. The man was, not only was he the head of psychiatry at a hospital, at a Lutheran hospital, he was also, he was legit. I mean, I've never seen anyone talk with such authority about the experience. When he talked, you knew he was telling the truth. And behind the scenes, he was the same guy. He was a very humble man and a very powerful man in what he talked about. But he talked about something. He talked about suicides, which I think was really interesting. And about that those who commit suicide are chained to the consequences of their decisions, to the point they had that decision, I imagine. And one of my authors in my premier author training, one of them said to me, he wrote a book about his near-death experience, and he had a brother-in-law who committed suicide. Now, according to George Ritchie's book, those who commit suicide, again, they're still on this earth. They're trapped to it. They're trapped to the people, the consequences, what they did. And he said, I died. He goes, as soon as I left my body, my brother-in-law was standing next to me. I could see him. I go, wow, that's interesting. That goes right along with what he said. He goes, he was just standing there, and he was very sorrowful. He goes, first thing he said, and this sounds just like George Ritchie. First thing he said, he goes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And that's what in Return from Tomorrow, these people are saying over and over, I'm sorry. Sorry for what I did. And now they have no effect. They can't affect the world because they don't have a physical body now. So anyway, I just thought that was really fascinating. It was a really powerful book. But so to hear that from another person, we also have Vinnie Tolman. He's in our community. He's not on tonight, but he had a very interesting near-death experience, and he wrote a book about it. He's writing a book about it, and his journey on it was fascinating. He was poisoned. Actually, he had food poisoning in the hospital, and he saw the whole thing when he was dead. And he was dead in the back of an ambulance, and he heard the conversation of them saying, "Hey, he's gone." And the interesting thing is, in all these cases, is that they weren't really sure it was them. The reason I bring this up is because we're looking at magnifying our lives. And I think it may be possible, it may be the truth that we can't really magnify our life if we don't understand our death. You know, to live in complete denial that we are going to die and act accordingly. And it's not a bad thing to say, will this affect me? I mean, how will I feel about this on my deathbed? Is this something I'll be proud of on my deathbed? Is it that important? And on some level, that it can put things in a perspective that makes life a little bit more manageable. That makes life, and for some that sounds terrifying, but it's like, we know we're going to die. We also know that there is massive, massive evidence that death is not the end. And in spite of a media that is obsessed with erasing God and our source from the world, from erasing any connection with that, it's clearly ridiculous. You know, it's just, and historically, we see that as well. There have been near-death experiences that we have written down older than Roman times. This has been going on for a long, long time. So it's not a bad thing, I think, as we look at magnifying our lives and the kind of lives we want to live. We talk about, so what is the impact of what we're doing and on the death we're going to have? I'd like to read something I was telling you about that Diane found, and I'm going to put it in an upcoming book. I wrote it after a perfect day, and it's called Conversations with the Reaper. Would you like to hear this? Okay. I'm gonna get a drink. He came like a thief in the night. I woke with the start from my troubled slumber at the sound of his intrusion, a slow shuffle outside my bedroom. Fearfully, I pressed myself against the door as I imagined the specter lurking on the other side, a shadow cloaked in a black robe of linen, a faceless hood gaping dark and deep as a throat. Then came the cold rapping of knuckles against my door. With my faltering strength, I braced myself against it to keep it from entering. What do you want? His voice came forcefully, yet arid as the desert wind. I do not answer questions for which the answer is already known, my friend. You call me friend, I said bitterly. I'll call you what you will, he replied. What mortal name you pin to yourself matters not, nor does it change my evening's errand. Then you are coming for me, he did not reply. Do not call me friend, I said. I didn't invite you, nor do I welcome you. But you did invite me. When did I invite you? The day you were born, our meeting was agreed upon. It was part of the accord. But I wasn't expecting you. How foolish, he replied, to not expect the inevitable. Are you surprised by a sunset? I wasn't expecting you right now. Well, I rarely am expected at the moment, he said. But I need no appointment. I can come at any time. Ask the winds that blow which leaf will be the next to fall. But in turn, all must fall. It is the way of the tree, it is the way of all life. Well, I have no desire to see you. I heard what sounded like a sigh. You make me feel unwelcome, friend. You know, not all turn me away. Often the old and lonely and the miserable seek me out. In time, if you had more time, even you would hope for my arrival. But still, you disappoint me, friend. How have I disappointed you? That you have not learned to receive me, nor other lessons of life. I have learned of life, I said, just not of death. Then you have learned of neither, came the voice. For life can only be understood through death. How often is it said by humans that it's only after brushing against me that they came to know their life? It's a cliche, is it not? I didn't answer. There's much you do not know, he said, but there are times that I am patient, and tonight I have time. So ask me what you will, and I will answer honestly, for I am the most honest of visitors. If you're honest, then why are you cloaked, and why do you conceal your face? I've concealed nothing. You are the tailor of the cloak I wear, not I. It is humanity that hides me. In truth, I am naked and seen everywhere. Then tell me, cruel visitor, why do I fear you so? Cruel, you insult me, but still I will answer. You fear me, in part, because all humanity fears the unknown. But that is only part of the truth. It is not because you do not know me, but because you do not know yourself. If you knew who you really were, you would know who I really am. And who is that? I am the usher and not the destination. I considered his words. I still fear you. Is it because I pry your grip from the trifles to which you cling? Is it because I force open your eyes to the illusion of possession, even that of your own mortality? Have you lived your life as the fools who spend their time acquiring what they must leave behind? For life was not meant to gather, but to become. I should have known this sooner, I said. I'm not ready for you. Alas, too often I hear that refrain, but it's wasted breath, for I, my friend, am ready for you. And despite my efforts, the door began to open. I fell back in my bed and shielded my eyes from my horrible caller. Look upon me, he said with power. Remove the cloak from your mind and see me for who I truly am and know yourself. Slowly I looked up. My visitor looked much different than I had imagined. He wore not a black robe, but a vibrant robe of green. His face was fair and comely. His hands were not the chalk of bone, but of flesh and supple and covered with rings. In his eyes was truth. And I knew that all he said was true. He smiled at me. Yes, you remember now, don't you? I am the bearer of new life. Every beginning springs from another beginning's end. It is the greatest of all human truths that death gives birth to life anew. I'll come with you, I said. Yes, but only for a short while, for I come only to escort you to a new place, a new door. The journey is yours alone. I am not the destination. What do you think? Yeah, the idea that death is a new life is something that I think is vital for us. So we think, I have had enough spiritual experiences in my life, enough contact with the supernatural to know that there is more than the physical part of what's here. I've been intellectually dishonest to say it doesn't exist. Not just the incredible inspiration that comes to me, that times blows my mind as I write things I don't even know. But there are times that there are movings and things around us. And so I don't know that I could say I'm completely unafraid of death, but it doesn't strike terror in my heart. And maybe the actual experience itself, I don't know. And the loneliness and separation. But on the other hand, I find at this time of my life that it's a great power to help magnify. As I look at my realms and my kingdom, aren't the 5 kingdoms completely adjacent to this idea that we are connected, and we're connected to this source? The book I just finished writing and turned in, the Noel Letters, is about a woman who comes to meet her father, and just before she lands, he's died 4 hours earlier. And it's about discovering who he is and what he left behind. And as I wrote that book, I really felt a lot of connection to myself. And so maybe I can, would you like me to share the Grim Reaper with the conversations? Okay. Maybe what I'll do is I'll put it, is everyone on Cornerstone, the Cornerstone Facebook page?
The better place would be the members page, I think. That's where everybody is, or should be.
Right, okay. So, wait, there's a thing right here that says file. Could I just,
Yes.
can I
You just upload it to the chat.
I'll just upload it right here, right now. So let's see.
And then when I post the recording, that won't be available, but I'll post this file along with the recording, if that's okay.
Yep, but I should put a copyright on here. So don't go.
Oh,
This is for an upcoming book, so yeah. Copyright.
all right. So don't download the first one, everyone.
Okay. Yeah, that will make my publisher happy. There you go. Okay. Michael, if you can erase that first one, that'd be great.
I can't.
Okay, so do the second one. So anything you'd like to share tonight? Any ideas about what I've talked about?
So my wife is a pretty well-known near-death experiencer, and it is so interesting living with her because she just doesn't worry about things that I worry about. She just has this calmness and this serenity, like everything is going to be okay. And having had that experience really, I think, shaped her in some great ways. It also shaped her in some interesting ways. Like she just, the money of, or the concept of money is just like it flows in and it flows out. And if we have it, she spends it. It's like, you know, and she just, there's just no concern, but you know, to hear her, you know, when she speaks, in fact, she's speaking at the International Convention of Near-Death Studies coming up this week. It's actually, or not this week, but next month. It's in Salt Lake City this year, the International Convention is. And it's pretty powerful to see that effect that she has on people, and to also just experience it through her eyes. So,
oh,
yeah.
I'd like to attend that. That's interesting. That's right. Angie wrote a best-selling book about her experience. What is it called, Michael?
Beyond the Darkness.
Beyond the Darkness. Now, she had a scary experience.
She attempted suicide, and she found herself chained, and very much like what Dr. Ritchie says. And at the very last moment, she was given an opportunity to choose out, and she did. And she was given that second chance. So, yeah.
That's fascinating. Yeah, she told me that. One of the things that's interesting about people who come to these near-death experiences is they have a super high rate of divorce, and they have very low motivation. It's almost they realize that they're in a training ground and it kind of sucks. And so it's like, okay, they almost can't wait to get to the next side. It's like, okay, and they watch people run around. It's like, you have no clue. You're living like this is it. And it's like, no, there's something beyond. So I think it's fascinating just to see how it impacts lives. And the motivation thing surprised me, because I came from a level where I was running like crazy trying to earn salvation.
Mhm.
And so, and to hear that actually was different was surprising that people
Angie's highly motivated, so that doesn't apply to her. But I am her 7th husband, so that piece of it does.
Marcy, you had something to say?
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Just two quick things. The first is that the church I belong to, which I think many of you might belong to the same church, has a new handbook. And the line in the new handbook corrections that really struck me was a line about suicide that I don't remember seeing printed before. But it mentioned that that basically because many people, maybe some even on this call, have people close to them who have committed suicide or attempted it, and it's this kind of a no man's land, endless pit that you think about. When my mother attempted several times, unsuccessfully, but thankfully, but I know that feeling of losing someone and having doctrinal messages that person is going to not make it, or whatever. And I loved what was in the new handbook. It said something like, we would leave that to God to decide, and we are in no way in a position to ever judge the mental capacity of a person to understand the consequences of what they're doing at any time. And so I just thought that was kind of comforting. That was my first comment. My second one, really quickly, is I mentioned wanting to live to be 100 years. That was not exactly what I meant. What I meant to say is that I plan to live to 100 and not give up on living just because I'm at an age where maybe I don't see a lot of future. That if we plan and prepare and show up every day, ready to do the best we can, if we get taken out early, okay. But we should be ready to play the whole game.
Well, I love that, Marcy, because that's what I would talk with Kingdom Organizer about. My friend who said, look, all my friends are living for their death.
Yeah.
Because I'm not done living. There's still things I want to see and do, and I love that. So, and that is, again, magnification of the call. Let's see, Janelle, you asked, is a high divorce rate prior or after? It's after the near-death experience, after they've been to the other side. That's when so, Stephen.
So, this talk of death reminded me of just 2 deaths I had experienced in my own family over the last couple of years. The first was with my grandfather, who we knew he was going to die soon because the doctors had called him into the hospital after a blood test, and they ran some more tests and discovered that his kidneys were failing. And so we knew, being 91 years old and his quality of life had greatly diminished in years past, that we knew his time was going to come, and so we had time to prepare for it. And we were sad when it happened, but we were also kind of glad that his suffering was not going to last any longer, and that he was finally in the rest of our Father in heaven. But the second death just occurred 2 months ago, and it was of my uncle. And it came as a big shock to my family, because he's about 3 years older than my father. My father's 64 years old, but he was the picture of health. He had great physical conditions, and he had no mental deterioration whatsoever. And he just seemed like he was going to outlive everybody in the family. But then one day he just started having some heartburn, and after spending the day trying to nurse it, he gets up from his bed and says to my aunt, I think I'm finally better. And then he just drops dead right there. And that death by itself, in contrast to my grandfather's death, kind of offered me 2 perspectives of what death really is that, and it made me realize that, death could be something you expect over a certain period of time, but you never expect it. And so that's why when it suddenly happens, it's so shocking and surprising. And it reminded me just how none of us really know how much time we have left. And it had really spurred me to start making plans for the future to try and accomplish those things I've wanted to accomplish before I die. And I have no fear of death myself. I know what life after death has to offer. But I'm afraid that if I stand before my God and haven't finished what I had set out to accomplish in life for his name and for his glory, then I know that I would regret it once I got to the other side. And So that anxiety has been spurring me because I really don't know when or how my Father in Heaven's going to call me back to make an account for my own life.
Yeah, we don't know the time. It something in there in Return from Tomorrow, and I love this part. He's saying, "Wait, it came too soon. I didn't even get into college." And he says, "Death can come at any time." And the voice is communicating with them just telepathically. And he said, he goes, "But I just bought some life insurance." And you think about it, it's like the experience that the things we think of. And he said, something at that moment I realized that this being, my source, that there was a level of mirth, that there's this holy laughter, not at me, but with me. And the idea that beyond it all, that joy was stronger than it all is. I thought that was absolutely beautiful. I think that concept, it's like that joy, that love prevails. And I believe that I actually have this, one of my favorite quotes I've ever written is, spoiler alert, in the end, love wins. And I actually have this carved in my pen set on my desk. In the end, love wins. And to always understand that. And so I think as we look at our life and how we're going to move forward and magnify our life, that we stay as close as possible, that we have a life that is, the paradigm is based in love. And if we use love to navigate the first, second, third, fourth, fifth kingdom, it's going to be very powerful. And it's always when we get off that we don't do as well. That all of a sudden we get off the path. So Joseph, your hands up.
Yeah, I actually had a few thoughts. So first of all, when you said the thing about suicide and how people essentially feel tied to their actions, it just kind of got me thinking about how I believe we all have a purpose on this earth, and possibly that because those people didn't have their chance to finish their purpose, they're essentially still tied to that purpose and doing whatever they can while they're still being tied to the earth or something. And then my other thought was regards to what Marcy said. Like in my psychology class, we learned that everybody is so different, that we have, everybody's thoughts and like just the layers that really has is so deep that there's no way in the world we can ever judge another person. And I think also when we understand that, I don't know, I look at death as one of the church leaders that a lot of people are on this call with said that death is just like a door. It's just like going through a door, and it's only our thinking about death that makes it so painful. Because death is only going to happen to us once, but I would just guess that it's probably happened at least probably thousands of times to each of us on this call already. But when we understand that it actually only happens once and we're just at peace with the life that we're living, I think we're able to be just so much more happy.
The song "Every New Beginning" comes from Some of the Beginnings End from Train. It makes me wonder if birth felt like death to us. If our birth into this earth felt like a death and a separation, it may be. So Joanne, you had a comment. Thank you, Joseph.
Okay. One of the things that impressed me very much that I thought about ever since from George Ritchie's book was his experience coming back. How was he going to live without the light that he experienced during his near death? And so when he came back, he just craved to see that light and was going from person to person looking for it. And he recognized it when he found it, but it made me think, let's be that light for each other. And that was something that he wanted to do as well, to live his life so that the light would continue to grow in him, and that the rest of us should do that too, so that we recognize it in each other and help each other grow in that way.
I had an interesting experience with that, Joanna. I went to hear him speak that night, and there were about 1,000 people in the audience. And afterwards, he was just surrounded by people. And I walked up there because I was just want to say goodbye. And I was standing there, and he turned and he pointed at me. He said, "This man right here, I see it in his eyes." He said, "He has the light I talked to you about." And it was one of the most humbling things. And I looked around to see who was pointing at. It's like, yeah, Richard. Which gave me a lot of pause, because I'd read that book too and thought, do we have that mirror in our face? So, okay. Thank you so much for your contribution. Is there anyone else that got to say something before we go? Okay, thank you so much. I hope this has been really hopeful for you. You know, I hope that I do recommend you read Return from Tomorrow, because it's a very powerful book. I believe it. The man has never varied from his story ever at any place I've ever seen him, and everything. He's been solid. And I've seen him attacked by the press, and he took them apart. It was the most beautiful thing to watch. It was almost like someone was saying, "Yeah, there is no Leaning Tower of Pisa," and he said, "Yeah, you'll know. You just know. You'll know. I've seen it. It's just like, you will know the Christ." That's what he said. You will know the Christ. It's fascinating, because he actually opened some ideas scientifically that were like mind changing. It was beautiful. So we are going our community next week. We're going to talk about our community. First of all, I would like to honor. Did CJ, you still yet? I would like to honor CJ and Janelle. They have stepped up to do something really great for our community. And I want to say thank you before I tell you what they did, which is amazing. But we're going to talk about it. Our community is, as you know, we've been kind of in a holding pattern. And what I love is that we have built such a strong group here, that we have built this tremendous, real community. And I hope that you guys, as you can see right behind my desk here, I hope that you are magnifying your lives correctly in a way that makes a difference. I am no less productive than I was 2 years ago when I started to use my organizer, when I was using it for myself, and the power of it. And I still share it and talk about it. As a business model, our business model has not been working, right? But there's some reasons, and we know that. And we actually have some very powerful people who are excited about it. But we have to get some things fixed. And this is where CJ and Janelle have stepped up to do some really powerful stuff, for which I honor them, and I honor their spirit, and I'm very grateful that they're willing to help us. So next week, I want to talk about our community. I want you to talk about, what you would like to see. And as we move forward, it's funny, I got a text tonight right here. I can show it to you. From Benjamin Hardy. He was just going to bed, but he just wrote, "I think it's a sign that we need to work right now. We need to work right now on the 5 Kingdoms book. We've got to get this done." And things are moving in the right direction. This is we have the chance to help people have better lives, but I hope that you're living a better life. I hope you're committed to actually doing this, to do this correctly and be part of it, that you're not falling to ways of laziness. I realized as I looked at my beautiful bed this morning that I make every day, and I thought, that little commitment, I realized, makes my day better all day long. That first little success, it improves my day all day long. My idea when I go down that I have not lost touch with my children. My children are in so many different places and so much going on. I'm so grateful that I have something to remind me, and that also reminds me, if I did it or not, that I'm connected in all the right ways. So we don't have regrets. We don't feel like that we've left things out that we want to do. So this is, I hope that you're living in your power. I mean, that really is what I'm saying, that you're living a magnified life. I have never been more excited about the things ahead. I really believe that we are on the verge of launching something powerful, about something that is going to be change the world. I believe that with that power, we're going to also be an instrument in God's hands in freeing his children as we step out and work with helping and fighting trafficking, which is something I'm getting more and more involved in. I'm amazed at the energy that's coming our way and the people who are being sent to me right now. There's some really powerful things happening and some big changes, and I'm excited about it. I'm excited, and our community is going to be very much involved with all of this because we have one goal: magnify lives and help all of our sources, all of God's children, magnify their lives. And so I hope you're excited about being on this train with us. And as we get some things fixed and prepare for Kingdom Organizer 2.0 to launch, to relaunch in a way that we can watch growth come again and enable us to reach out and help. Because I think we have fundamentally, we have everything correct, right where we need to be and what we want to offer. And we just have to see us. We have some technical problems, and blasted COVID has not helped, right? This hasn't helped at all as people. But the truth is, this is a time that people really do need to be part of a community like this. So anyway, thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to the talk with you. CJ, did you want to say anything right now, or we just keep it to next week and have you speak next week? Let's just wait till next week. And
I don't need to speak at all.
Yeah. So blessings to you and to everyone. Michael, thank you. Good luck in Alaska. Will you be gone in Alaska next Sunday?
No, we'll actually be back in time. So.
Oh, fantastic. And where in Alaska are you going?
I have no idea. We're flying out of Ketchikan on a float plane to a resort in the backwoods somewhere. So.
Are you going over the glacier field there? I love Ketchikan.
Yeah, I think we are. Yeah.
Wait, no, that's Juneau, right?
Juneau's got the glacier.
Has the glacial field. Yeah. Well, eat a lot of good salmon and watch out for bear.
Okay, we'll do.
Yeah. Okay, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you.
We will see you next Sunday.
Yep.
Okay. Take care. God bless.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Thank you.
And Joseph, thank you for sending that, and I'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.